The first bomb hits at 2 a.m. The ground shakes, then silence, 3 seconds of silence. And then the depot answers, stored munitions begin cooking off one after another, sending pillars of fire hundreds of feet into the air, turning the night sky above Isfahan orange for miles in every direction. A citizen captures it on his phone. Hours later, the President of the United States posts the same footage to social media without a caption, no explanation, no context, just fire. And what that fire was burning may be far more significant than anyone in Washington is willing to say publicly. Isfahan is a city of 2.3 million people. Iranians call it Nesfi Jan, half the world. It is one of the most beautiful cities in the Middle East, famous for its mosques, its bridges, its turquoise tiled architecture. It is also one of the most militarized. The Badr military airbase sits on its outskirts. A uranium conversion facility operates inside the city. And near Mount Soffeh, on the southeastern edge of Isfahan, sits one of the largest ammunition depots in the entire Iranian military, a sprawling complex of underground bunkers, surface storage facilities, and hardened shelters that has served as a central node in Iran's weapons logistics network for decades. On Monday night, the 30th of March, 2026, the United States struck this depot with what a U.S. official speaking to the Wall Street Journal described as a high volume of 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs. The official used the technical term, penetrator munitions. These are not ordinary bombs. They are designed to do one thing, punch through reinforced concrete and reach whatever is buried below. The primary strike triggered what military analysts call secondary explosions, a chain reaction that occurs when the initial blast ignites the munitions stored inside the target. Iran International received citizen footage showing a luminous cloud followed by a mushroom-shaped explosion. NASA's fire tracking satellites confirmed active fires near Mount Soffeh at the exact coordinates. The fireballs were visible from across the city. This was not the first time Isfahan had been hit. In June 2025, during Operation Midnight Hammer, the city's nuclear enrichment facilities were struck by Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from an Ohio-class submarine in the Gulf of Oman. But this time, the target was different. And what was stored inside that target is the question that nobody in Washington seems willing to answer directly. To understand why the United States dropped bunker busters on an ammunition depot, rather than cruise missiles, rather than standoff weapons, rather than any of the cheaper, simpler options in its arsenal, you have to understand what a bunker buster actually is and what it tells you about the target. A standard 2,000-pound bomb, the GBU-31 JDM, is a GPS-guided weapon that detonates on impact. It is devastatingly effective against surface targets, buildings, vehicles, radar stations, airfields, but it cannot reach anything underground. The concrete bounces it. The earth absorbs it. Whatever is buried stays buried. A bunker buster is different. The GBU-28, the weapon most likely used in this strike, has a reinforced steel casing and a delayed action fuse. It does not explode on contact with the surface. It punches through concrete, rock, earth. It penetrates before detonating. The 2,000-pound variant can reach targets buried under approximately 20 feet of reinforced concrete or 100 feet of earth. Now ask yourself, why would you need that capability for an ammunition depot? Ammunition stored on the surface can be destroyed with any bomb. Ammunition stored in standard warehouses can be destroyed with JDM. You only use penetrator munitions when the target is buried deep enough that nothing else can reach it. The weapon selection itself is evidence of what was underneath. And this is where the story becomes considerably more complicated. Reports circulating in the days before this strike cited by the Wall Street Journal and multiple other outlets, suggested that Iran may have moved approximately 540 kilograms of highly enriched uranium to an underground facility in Isfahan. This is enriched uranium that was previously stored at other sites damaged in the June 2025 strikes. Iran, according to these reports, relocated its most sensitive nuclear material to hardened bunkers beneath its conventional military infrastructure, hiding it, in effect, inside an ammunition depot. And this is where the story takes a critical turn. If this kind of in-depth analysis is what you are looking for, subscribe and hit the bell. We break down developments like this as they happen. To put 540 kilograms in perspective, the International Atomic Energy Agency has stated that approximately 42 kilograms of highly enriched uranium is sufficient for a single nuclear weapon. 540 kilograms represents enough material for roughly 12 to 13 weapons. If that material was present underneath the Isfahan depot when those bunker busters hit, this strike was not an ammunition attack, it was a nuclear interdiction. Now, this remains unconfirmed. The U.S. official who spoke to the Wall Street Journal described the target only as an ammunition depot. No mention of uranium, no mention of nuclear material. Trump's video post contained no caption at all. The Pentagon has not released a damage assessment, and Iran's nationwide internet blackout. Now, in its 31st day, with connectivity at approximately 1% of normal levels according to NetBlocks, means independent verification from inside the country is nearly impossible, but the weapon selection does not lie. You do not use a high volume of penetrator munitions against surface-level ammunition. You use them when you need to reach something buried. And the question of what was buried beneath that Isfahan depot is now one of the most consequential, unanswered questions of this entire war. What we do know is what happened on the surface. The secondary explosions were massive. Citizen footage shows sequential fireballs, the unmistakable signature of stored missiles and warheads igniting in a chain reaction. The explosions were powerful enough to shake the ground across Isfahan, a city of more than 2 million people, in the early hours of the morning. Emergency teams responded to fires at the depot near Mount Soffeh, and the footage made its way out of Iran despite the blackout carried by citizens who found fragments of connectivity sent to Iran International and then broadcast to the world. Hours later, Donald Trump shared what appears to be aerial footage of the strike on Truth Social. No caption, no context, no claim, just the video. A U.S. official subsequently confirmed to the Wall Street Journal that the footage showed the Isfahan attack. The decision to share the video is itself significant. In military operations, battle damage footage is typically classified. Sharing it publicly is a deliberate messaging choice. It says, we did this, we can prove it, and we want the world to see it. Within hours, Iran responded not with missiles this time, but with words, and the words were chosen carefully. Iran's Vice President Mohammad Reza Aref posted a message directly addressing the presence of American troops on Karg Island, Iran's primary oil export terminal in the Persian Gulf. His statement was blunt. Trump can decide to send troops to Karg, but bringing them back is no longer his decision. Because no one returns home from hell. That is not the language of diplomacy. That is the language of a government preparing its population for a ground confrontation. The statement is significant for 3 reasons. First, it confirms that Iran is aware of and deeply alarmed by American troop movements toward Karg Island. The USS Tripoli, an amphibious assault ship, was photographed by CENTCOM sailing through the Indian Ocean toward the Middle East on the same day. The 31st of March 9 Expeditionary Unit, roughly 3,500 Marines and sailors, arrived in the region on the 28th of March. Reports suggest elements of the 82nd Airborne Division are also deploying second. The hell framing echoes the rhetorical escalation pattern Iran has used before major retaliatory strikes. When the IRGC warned civilians to leave areas near US bases in the Gulf days before striking Prince Sultan Air Base, it used similar apocalyptic language. Third, the statement was made by the vice president, not a military commander, not an IRGC spokesperson. A civilian government official making direct military threats suggests the political leadership is now fully aligned with the military's escalation posture. The distinction between Iran's political and military hierarchies, already thin, appears to have dissolved entirely. Based on the evidence, the Isfahan strike was clearly a major blow to Iran's conventional ammunition reserves and possibly to something far more sensitive beneath them. Iran's response, focusing not on the ammunition loss but on threatening us ground forces, suggests Tehran is less concerned about what it lost and more concerned about what comes next. A potential ground operation to seize its remaining enriched uranium. But here is the dimension that almost nobody is covering, and it may be the most important part of this entire story. The Isfahan strike reveals a fundamental strategic problem that the United States has been quietly grappling with since the war began. Bombs alone cannot secure nuclear material. Here is why. A bunker buster can destroy a facility, it can collapse tunnels, shatter bunkers, incinerate stored munitions, but it cannot extract 540 kilograms of enriched uranium from underground. It cannot confirm whether that material was destroyed in the blast or merely buried deeper. It cannot verify whether the explosion dispersed radioactive material into the surrounding environment, a contamination scenario that would affect 2.3 million civilians in Isfahan. And it cannot tell you whether Iran moved the uranium out before the strike hit. The Wall Street Journal reported earlier this month that Trump is considering a military operation to physically extract Iran's enriched uranium. Such an operation would require American forces on the ground inside Iran, potentially for days or weeks. That is not a strike. That is an invasion of the most sensitive nuclear site in the country, in the middle of an active war, in a city of 2.3 million people. Isfahan has been targeted before. In June 2025, during Operation Midnight Hammer, more than 24 Tomahawk missiles hit the city's nuclear conversion facility. General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said at the time that all three nuclear sites, Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan, had sustained extremely severe damage and destruction. Trump claimed the sites had been completely and totally obliterated. But here is the problem with that claim. A classified Defense Intelligence Agency assessment, later leaked, concluded that the American bombs had set Iran's nuclear program back by less than 6 months, not destroyed it permanently. The White House called the report flat out wrong, but the subsequent movement of enriched uranium to hardened underground sites suggests that Iran's nuclear infrastructure was not obliterated. It was relocated, which brings us back to Monday night. If those bunker busters hit a depot containing enriched uranium, the strike may have dispersed radioactive material underground, creating a contamination scenario that is far easier to cause than to clean up. The IAEA has already noted radiological contamination at Natanz following the June 2025 strikes. Isfahan's status remains unknown because the internet blackout means no independent radiation monitoring data is leaving the country. The Isfahan strike lands at a moment when every dimension of this conflict is escalating simultaneously. Oil prices have crossed $100 a barrel for the first time since the war began. West Texas Intermediate is trading above $106. Brent crude is above $114. Asian stock markets fell sharply on Tuesday morning. South Korea's Kospi dropped more than 4%. Japan's Nikkei fell 2.24%. The economic shockwaves are no longer theoretical. They are landing. On the same day as the Isfahan strike, an Iranian drone hit a fully loaded Kuwaiti crude oil tanker at Dubai port's anchorage. Kuwait's military confirmed its air defenses were responding to hostile missile and drone attacks. Bahrain reported strikes on its industrial aluminum smelting facility. The UAE intercepted drones overnight. Explosions were reported around Israeli oil infrastructure in Haifa. Iran's strategy has become unmistakable. For every strike the U.S. lands on Iranian military infrastructure, Iran retaliates against the economic infrastructure of America's Gulf allies. The message is simple. If our depots burn, your oil burns too. Trump has escalated his own rhetoric to match. He threatened to take the oil in Iran and warned that Iranian energy sites could be obliterated if a deal is not reached to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. According to reports, Trump has also told aides he is willing to end the war, even if the strait remains largely closed, a significant potential concession that suggests the economic costs are beginning to outweigh the strategic objectives. Meanwhile, Iran's internet blackout continues into its 31st day. Connectivity remains at approximately 1%. Inside Iran, 2.3 million residents of Isfahan are living through airstrikes with almost no ability to communicate with the outside world. The humanitarian dimension of this conflict, already severe, is compounding with every strike. Over 10,000 Iranian military sites have now been struck by U.S. forces. Over 3,000 targets have been hit by Israel. More than 300 American service members have been wounded. 13 have been killed. And the war is entering its 5th week with no ceasefire in sight. There is one dimension of this story I did not have time to cover today. The potential radiological consequences of using penetrator munitions against a facility that may have contained enriched uranium. If Iran confirms contamination, or if the IAEA reports abnormal radiation levels near Isfahan, this strike transforms from a conventional military operation into something with entirely different legal and humanitarian implications. If you want a deep dive on that angle, tell me in the comments, and I will make it the next video. What the Isfahan strike reveals is that the United States has reached the limit of what air power alone can achieve against Iran's nuclear program. Bombs can destroy facilities. They cannot secure nuclear material. The next decision, whether to send ground forces into Isfahan to physically extract what remains, will define whether this war stays conventional or crosses into territory that no American president has entered since Iraq. The indicator to watch is Karg Island. If Marine forces move toward Iran's coast, Isfahan will be the reason why I covered the Prince Sultan Air Base strikes and why Iran's counter-air strategy is working in this video right here. If today's analysis added something you did not hear from the news, that one completes the tactical picture. I will see you there.